Hey, I'm Eshghi, and this is Metal Mastermind. In an ideal world, you wouldn't have to establish rules. Everyone would act considerately. But with experience, you learn that certain things don't happen unless they're mentioned in certain cases. Like, if I have a band here and they're drinking some beers, I'm probably not going to tell them to stop drinking beers. But if I have a band here and they get wasted, then that's going to be something I probably talk about to them the next time they come in. We're around a lot of expensive equipment, and quite honestly, it's a day with a band is a long day. It's an exhausting day. And when people aren't focused, it's just not, it's not enjoyable, because it's kind of becomes more like babysitting than, making a record. And that's not really my job. So I do think that it's good to give people the benefit of the doubt and stuff like that, but you also have to set some ground rules. What I recommend is, for example, if you're a mixer and you keep getting files in some kind of disastrous way that's forcing you to spend a lot of time on utility work rather than mixing, you should make a PDF of how you want all your files delivered. And all of a sudden, some people aren't going to listen. Some people are still going to mess it up. But, 80% of the people who get this PDF are at least going to read it and do their best to deliver their files in the way that they know you're going to be able to start mixing and get stuff done. So I think it's really, really important to make that part of your professional production sort of process, is maybe just one sheet, of how to deliver files, or how to be prepared for sessions, right? If you're a drummer, maybe rehearse to the click. Maybe rehearse the song you're going to play to a click, right? Or maybe if you're a singer, maybe do your vocal warm-ups before coming in. Don't stay up until 6 a.m. the night before a session so that you're like hacking a lung out while trying to sing a high belty note. Come prepared. If you are in a band with 2 guitar players and you've never played together without the drummer, well, now is the time. You're going to the studio. Schedule that rehearsal where the 2 guitar players actually figure out what each other are playing, so that, when you're not being masked by people at a bar, drums, cymbals, and, bad acoustics, when you're in the studio and everything's under a microscope, that you're not going, oh, you play that? Like, yeah, man, you guys are in a band together. Like, that was your job to figure that out. So I see this happen time and time again, where people come to the studio unprepared and they sort of act like, oh well. And it's like, honestly, you're putting the engineer through more trouble than you should, and the producer through more trouble than you should. So, step up to the plate and prepare yourself for each session. And if you're the producer and you're the person that's constantly sort of spinning your wheels because other people aren't prepared, it is up to you to communicate those things, or else it's just going to keep happening. It depends on how involved they let me get as a producer. So when I'm producing a project, I usually like to do pre-production, which means I'll probably be at a rehearsal. I might, if they're a songwriter, I might even be playing bass or guitar at a rehearsal with a drummer and a songwriter, and we'll be working on all sorts of format things and phrasing things and hits and arrangements, with a basic band. And that can be a huge boon to the project, because then you're getting in the studio and there's far fewer surprises. Now, in the studio, when someone's performing, my number one thing is to make them comfortable, first of all. So sometimes that means a bottle of water, somewhere to sit down, good lighting. Sometimes just dimming the lights will make a huge change in the mood. And sometimes asking the performer, is your headphone mix okay? Like, are you sure you can hear everything the way you want it to? Please don't be shy about telling me that you want to hear more of yourself or more reverb or anything like that, because I think the headphone mix is so much more important than your mix when they're performing. And I think it's really important to not get too full of yourself and, be so concerned about your mix, what you're listening to. I mean, it's important, but it's not nearly as important as what the performer is listening to. And what I'll do is put on the headphones and make sure that if I have an assistant, you know, I'll be making adjustments for them even before, just to make sure that it sounds full and robust and I can hear everything I need to in the headphones. That's just incredibly important. And I'm noticing that more and more as I get more experience, that I'm spending more time on that. The one other thing that I would say is that you gotta be straightforward. So although we're making them comfortable, I have to be able to tell a singer if they're singing flat. I have to be able to tell a singer if they're singing sharp, a drummer if they're playing ahead, a bass player if they're making too much string noise. You know, no one else is going to do it, and it's my job. And sometimes it doesn't invoke the best response. So you actually have to be careful about the way you deliver that stuff. You have to make your artist know that you care so much about making things sound good. You're even willing to speak about these difficult things. And that's why they hired you 100%, or that's why you're the leader of this project. So, of course you have to have manners, what I like to call bedside manners. You know, if you're a doctor, you're not going to be like, hey, you have a day to live. Sorry, it sucks. You know, you're going to be like, you know, a little different about it. Hey, you know, that was, I think you could control your tone a little more, you know, not like, you know, you sound like a banshee, you know, like you gotta, you know, and you know, you can laugh and have jokes too. That you gotta learn the person and learn what they're comfortable with. Some people like jokes, some people like self-deprecating humor, and then some people will take it really to heart, and you have to learn people. So this is being a producer is a people job. And I truly believe that, more so even than an engineer, even though that's also a people job. So don't be afraid to communicate. Always remember that you're on a team and that the goal of the team is to make the thing sound the best, and remind people of that when they take things personally. And don't let your ego get in the way. Sometimes someone has an idea that's different from what you think is going to be normal to you or even acceptable to you. And there are appropriate times to shoot those ideas down in the name of time, or in the name of, you just know it's not right. But I would say there are dozens of times, more than I'd like to admit, where I was 100% sure an idea wouldn't work, and maybe the artist pushed it or someone else pushed it, and then, you know, I was dead set against it, but then it ended up working. Maybe not exactly how I thought it would, but it ended up being pretty good, or even great. So yeah, I'd say communication, being straightforward. Definitely don't let your ego get in the way. You want to put your sonic signature on everything, of course, but it's not always called for. And hubris is a really good word, and something that I feel like a lot of musicians, engineers, and producers are missing. And in fact, just a lot of people in general, but you know, and I've been guilty of it myself. And when I was younger, and maybe even recently, but like, I try to be aware of it, and I try to not be that person. I love pre-production. Like, I mean, if I'm going to produce your project, and you have a way to record, and you haven't sent me rehearsals, or you haven't sent me pre-production recordings of guitars, I mean, we have everything at our fingertips now. Like, you can lay down either a programmed drum track or 2 mics and record your drums at a rehearsal. You can overdub your guitar parts. You know, you have 2 guitars, you pan one left, you pan one right, or put your bass down the middle, get your singer to do, you know, their main track and maybe a couple of harmonies. And like, it doesn't have to be all mixed. It doesn't have to be all polished. It doesn't have to be all tuned, but it gives me a really good idea of where we're coming from. And it starts a dialogue where we can start kind of actually getting some work done before we get in the studio. And it makes it so we're a lot less in the dark, right? We can start agreeing on what to call different sections. We can start agreeing. I mean, you know how many times I've been in the studio and I've been like, hey, that verse. And they're like, oh, you mean the chorus? And it's like, that's not a chorus. You know, it's like, you know, that can be something that is already smoothed out, right? So yeah, I think that using your DAW at home to do as many demo recordings, and you know what, like some great singles, I know there's some, like people get demoitis and stuff like that. Some great singles that you've heard, it's just like they recorded it with the producer, they scrapped it, they recorded it with the producer, they scrapped it, they recorded it with the producer, until it was the thing you hear on the radio. It wasn't just like, okay, nailed it. You know, it's, and you have to be willing to take things through those strides in order to get those types of results. Well, I think time constraints are something really funny, aren't they? It's like, you know, well, oh, you know, I don't want to do it that way because it's going to take so much time. It's like, well, you know, welcome to music production. Like this stuff takes time, and no one has a lot of fun moving a kick drum around for 2, 3, or 4 hours, but you know, we all do it, you know, and there's those things that need to be done that aren't as, they're not as fun or interesting, but the result of them is that professional work. The more that I do this, the more busy I get, and the more managing time becomes not like, it's not an option for me not to manage time. Honestly, if I didn't use a calendar, there would be times where I wouldn't know where to be because my life is getting to be that hectic. There are days where I have 3 different commitments. I work a lot of gigs. I teach a lot of different courses at different schools, and I do a lot of sessions and a lot of live shows, and none of them really have static schedules. Sometimes in the fall I have teaching, and then in the summer I don't, and then in the summer I'm doing live shows, and then in the fall I'm not. And you know, my calendar looks like a rainbow threw up. And you know, if I didn't organize my time, it would be a complete disaster. Now, even on a like sort of more zoomed in level, like during a session, you know, when I work with you, you know, I like receiving the rundown. Hey, this is what I want to accomplish, you know, because then it's like there's fewer surprises, and we can allot, okay, here's a couple hours, and we can figure out how long it's going to take. I think what a lot of people do is they book some time to do something, and then they say, oh, but can we do that? And can we do that? And can we do that? And they're not thinking that, all right, well, if we're going to break down the drums and then set up for the guitars, that's going to be another hour of setup. And then we're going to be getting phase, you know, and we're going to be getting, you know, mics placed and stuff. And I think a lot of musicians think of it, well, it only takes me 5 minutes to play the song. It's like, yeah, but to get to the point where we can capture the song properly, it might be hours, you know, and that's not being slow. That's just doing things properly and making sure that we're not rushing to the finish line, because that never really gets you a great result, in my opinion. I mean, it can, but I think that's more about luck and circumstance, really, than, I think it's always wise to allot more time than you think you will need with anything music production related, because I think it's foolish to think that anything will take less time than you think it will. It's a lot more common that it takes more time, and when it does take less time, hey, that's great. Take a lunch break. You know?